Welcome, pre-calc students, to the homework help video, page 826. Let's go ahead and get started with number 49. Let's take a look here. Okay, number 49, we are going to multiply two complex numbers in trig form. So here we go. You take the hypotenuse here and here, and you multiply those together, and then you add the angles. So we basically have 1/4 plus 1/12. Okay, there's a 1 here, even though you can't see it. And if you want to convert these over to degrees and then add the degrees, that is totally fine. I'm just going to keep them radians. So 1/4 would be the same thing as 3/12. So you really have 3/12 plus 1/12. That would be 4/12. Okay, so 3/12 is the same thing as 1/4. So 3/12 plus 1/12 is 4/12, which reduces to 1/3. So pi over 3 plus I sine, and of course you're adding the exact same fractions, so we'll get pi over 3. Okay, let me check the back of the book real quick to make sure we are accurate, and we are. Let's continue on. This is your answer. Okay, number 51. Okay, we're going to multiply these two complex numbers together. We'll take this number here times this number here, and we will get 10/9. And then we will add the angles. So cosine of 140 plus 60 would be 200 degrees plus I sine 200 degrees. Okay, let me check the answer key real quick, and we are moving on. Okay, number 53. Okay, we're going to multiply these two numbers together. So these two complex numbers together, they're written in trig form. So we'll take this number here times that number there. Let me grab my calculator. 0.45 times 0.60 would give us 0.27. So 0.27, and then we're going to add our angles together. So cosine of 510 degrees plus I sine 510 degrees. Let me check the answer key real quick, and we are moving on. Now, one thing I think they did, yes, and some books do this and some books don't. It's totally fine. You are welcome to leave your answer in this form. I have no problem with that. Some books want you to do this. They want you to keep your angle here between 0 and 360. Because really, think about it. 510 degrees is the same thing as 360 plus 150 more. So really, this is the same thing as 150, because you went 150 degrees past 360. So I'll accept this. The back of the book has this right here. Cosine of 150. Okay? And probably to match the back of the book from here on out, I'll probably write my answer like this one here. But either way is fine. I'm not going to be too upset about that. If your angle is larger than 360, that's going to be fine with me. Or you can subtract out 360 and make it smaller than 360. Either way is fine, okay? Not a big deal to me. Okay, number 55. Now in number 55, notice we're dividing two complex numbers, and notice there's no hypotenuse. So really there's a 1 here and a 1 here. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. Now, if you want to put that 1, you can. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. Totally up to you. And then we subtract these angles. So 50 minus 20 would be 30, plus I sine 30. Okay, let me go ahead and look at the back of the book here. Make sure we're right, and we will continue on. Yes, moving on to 57. Okay. Looks like the same thing again. There's really no hypotenuse, so there's really a 1 here, and there's really a 1 here, which we don't need to worry about. If you want to take 1 divided by 1 and put a 1 here, that's fine, and then your parentheses, you don't have to. It's up to you. Okay, we're going to subtract our angles. So we have 5 pi over 3 minus pi. Okay, minus pi over 1. There we go. Okay, now let's think this through. Pi over 1 would be the same thing as 3 pi over 3. Okay, I would encourage your students to look at it like this, to be honest with you. Most of you are probably just going to convert these over to degrees, which is fine. I'm going to use 5/3 minus 1. Okay? Just leave the pi off for a second. So minus 1 is the same thing as minus 3/3. So 5/3 minus 3/3 would be 2/3. And of course put the pi right here. So there we go. And there's your answer. Okay? So 5 pi minus pi. Let me check the back of the book real quick here. And we are correct. Let's move on to number 59. Okay, we're dividing two numbers that are in complex, dividing two complex numbers that are in trig form. So we take these two numbers here and we divide them. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Then we put our parentheses, and then we subtract. 52 minus 110 would be negative 58 degrees. Plus I sine negative 58 degrees. Okay, let's check the back of the book real quick. And that's what I thought they were going to have this for their answer. They have this. They have 4 cosine of 302 degrees. Now students, please understand that either one of these two answers here are acceptable, okay? I'm fine with either answer. Okay, think about it, students. If you go negative 58 to here, okay, that's the same thing as positive 302. Either way, you end up at the exact same place, which is on this line right here, and that's the goal, to end up at the same place. Okay, so I'll accept either one of these. Again, it looks like they want your answers to be between 0 and 360, and I'm probably going to write my answers from now on like this, so they match the back of the book. But on a test or a quiz, I would definitely accept this also. That's totally fine. Okay. All right, moving on to number 61 or 73. Excuse me. Okay, first of all, let me glance at the back of the book and see how they want your answer to be written for this one. Okay, they want your answer to be written in standard form. Okay, so we're going to take this and raise it to the 5th power, okay? So here we go. Let's quickly write this in trig form. So we're positive 1, positive 1. Draw our triangle. We're over 1 and we're up 1, so the hypotenuse will be square root of 2. So that's easy. And then the angle right here would be tangent theta equals 1 over 1, which is 45 degrees. So just that quickly, we've taken a complex number written in standard form, and we have written it in trig form. Now, we're going to take this to the 5th power, this whole thing right here. Okay? So here we go. First of all, we take square root of 2 to the 5th power, okay? So square root of 2, written 5 times. And here we go. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So we have 4 square root of 2. Easy enough. So we took this to the 5th power. Okay? Next, we take this angle here and multiply it times 5 because of this number right here. So 45 times 5 would be 225. Cosine of 225 plus I sine 225. Okay, there we go. So we wrote it. We took this original problem here. It was written in complex standard form. We wrote it in trig form, and then we raised it to the 5th power. Okay, now we're going to take this answer and write our final answer in standard form. So very quickly, we're at 200. This won't take long at all. We're at 225 degrees. So 180 plus 45 more. So the angle here is 45. And our hypotenuse is 4 square root of 2. So we're going to find our x and our y. Okay? So here we go. Cosine of 45 would be adjacent over hypotenuse. So 4 square root of 2 cosine of 45 equals x. Okay? And the cosine of 45 is square root of 2 over 2. So I have 4 square root of 2 over 1 times square root of 2 over 2 which would give me, now there's a 1 right here, okay, so 4 times 1 is 4, and square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. So 4 times 1 is 4, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is really square root of 4, which is 2. So the entire numerator becomes 8, okay? Again, 4 times 1 is 4, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2, 4 times 2 is 8, and then 1 times 2 is 2. So we end up with 4 for x, okay? Now it would be a negative 4 because we're going from here over to here, okay? So a negative 4. Now let's solve for y very quickly. Y would be sine 45 equals opposite over the hypotenuse. Multiply both sides by 4, square root of 2. Sine 45 equals y. So we have 4 square root of 2 over 1 times square root of 2 over 2. So we end up with the same thing, students. 8 over 2 equals y, which would be 4. It's a negative 4. So the answer would be negative 4 minus 4i. Okay, there we go. And let's check the answer key, and we are good. Okay, moving on. Okay, let's go ahead and quickly write this in trig form. Okay, students, let's go ahead and take this complex number, and we're going to raise it to the 7th power. Now, understand here that 2 is not inside the parentheses, so I'm going to totally ignore this 2, okay? And at the very end, let me say this. Normally, you could multiply the 2 through if there wasn't a 7 here, okay? But there is a 7 there, so you cannot multiply that 2 through. So what it's saying is this. You're taking a complex number, and you're raising it to the 7th power, okay? Now, once you do that, then the answer you get, you multiply it by 2. So I'm just going to totally forget that I even have this right here, okay? And to the very end, when I have my answer, then I'll multiply my final answer by 2. Okay, so we're going to take this and raise it to the 7th power. So let's quickly write it in trig form. So here we go. Over, up. So we're over square root of 3, and we're up 1. Okay, so the hypotenuse would be 2. Okay. The angle here would be, I'm going to use cosine, or no, I'm going to use sine, so I can use 2 whole numbers here. So I'm going to say sine of theta would be opposite over hypotenuse. So the angle would be 30 degrees. So our angle here is 30. So that was easy enough right there. So I have 2 parentheses sine of 30 plus cosine of 30 plus I sine 30. All of that to the 7th power, okay? So we take 2 to the 7th power, which is 128, and then we multiply 30 times 7, so 210 degrees. Now, students, I would really like to get to the place when we're taking these numbers here, these complex numbers written in trig form, like this one here is written in trig form, and we're going to write it in complex, in standard form. I would like to get to the place where we don't always have to draw the whole picture and do this, you know, 210, put the triangle, put 30 degrees, all of that. I mean, that's okay to do. In fact, we should always do that because we want to know what quadrant we're dealing in, okay? So it's okay to do that, like this, okay? 210 degrees. We're going to take this number now, and we're going to write it in standard form. So we go like this, and we rotate 210 degrees, and we're left over with 30. And that's fine. Remember the signs here are negative, negative, positive. But then here's what we can do. Instead of then labeling the sides and going through all that work, sine equals, opposite over hypotenuse, all of that, let's just do this. Let's just put 128 right here, okay? And then put cosine of 210 is really the same thing as cosine of what? 30, because of this right here, as long as you remember cosine is what here? Negative. And then plus I sine, it's okay to take the sine of 30 instead of 210, as long as you remember that sine is negative, so put a little negative sign here, okay? Now the cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2, so I have 128, then negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and then negative, positive negative is negative. The sine of 30 is 1/2. So negative 1/2 I. That's a lot faster. And now take your 128 and multiply it through. So you would get negative 64 square root of 3 minus 64i. Now that would be your final answer, except remember way up here at the beginning of the problem we had a 2 outside of the parentheses. So now we got to take our final answer and multiply it by 2, which would give us negative 128 square root of 3 minus 128i. Okay, let me check the back of the book real quick. And miracles still happen. We're actually correct. So there we go. Moving on to number 81. Okay. Now this one's already written in trig form for us, and so we can very quickly take this to the 12th power. Now the number outside here is a 1, so 1 to the 12th power is still just 1. Now we take this here, we multiply it by 12, okay? So we have pi over 4 times 12. Okay, so really we have 1/4 times 12. And we would get, of course, 3 over 1. So pi over 4 times 12 would be 3 pi. Now again, if you want to convert this to degrees and do it that way, that's totally fine. If you did that, you should get this. You should get 540 degrees right here instead of 3 pi. Okay, and this right here should have been 45 degrees. So if you want to do that, that's fine. 45 times 12 should give you 540 degrees. So we're going to continue on here. Okay, pi over 4 times 12 would be 3 pi. So there we go. So I took 1, I raised it to the 12th power. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And then I took pi over 4 times 12 and I got 3 pi. Now, next we want to write this in standard form. So 3 pi would be this. 3 pi would be 2 pi plus pi more. So we're right here. So really what we're doing is we're taking the cosine of what? 180 degrees plus I sine of 180 degrees. There we go. Pretty simple. So cosine of 180 is negative 1 plus sine of 180 is 0. So plus 0i. So the answer should be negative 1. And the back of the book says negative 1, okay? Alright, number 85. Okay, let's take this number here and let's quickly write it in trig form. So we're going to go positive 3 and negative 2. So we're down here. So we're positive 3, negative 2. So the hypotenuse would be square root of 13. And the angle here would be tangent of theta equals opposite over adjacent. So the angle would be 33.6. I'm just going to put 34 degrees. Okay, so there we go. So the trig form would be square root of 13. And then we start here, go all the way around to here. So 360 minus 34 would be 326 degrees. So cosine 326 plus I sine 326 degrees. Now students, listen. Usually I would have you go ahead and, well, let's hold on a second. Let's go ahead now that we've taken this and we've written this in trig form. Now let's go ahead and raise this whole thing to the 5th power. Okay? To the 5th power. So square root of 13 5 times. Square root of 13 times square root of 13 is 13. Square root of 13 times square root of 13 is 13. 13 times 13 would be 169. Square root of 13. Okay? And then 326 times 5 would be 1,630. Okay? Now, students, obviously, if we're going to go ahead and write this in standard form, what we're going to do next is we're going to see how many times we would go around until we get to 1,630, okay? So, we would go around 4 times, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And 360 times 4 is 1,440. So minus 1,630, and we're left over with 190 degrees. So you go around 4 times, and after you go around 4 times, you're left over with 180 plus 10 more. Now, students, think about it for a second, okay? Listen. The angle left over here inside the triangle is 10 degrees, correct? That's not one of our special angles. So if it's not one of our special angles, then you're more than welcome to just go ahead and use your calculator on this one here, okay? I mean, there's no way we're going to get out an exact number when we're dealing with 10 degrees. So what I'm trying to say to you is I would just take your calculator and I would type in the cosine of 1,630 degrees, okay? And here's what I would get. I would get 169 square root of 13, and then the cosine of 1,630 degrees is negative 0.9848, and then the sine of 1,630 degrees would be negative 0.1736, negative 0.1736 I. Okay? Now let me glance at the back of the book and see how they want you to write your final answer here. Let's see here. Okay, students, in the back of the book, they did actually want us to go ahead and just get an estimated answer. So I can take this times this, and then this times this. That's all calculator work. So I'm going to type in my calculator 169 times the square root of 13, enter, and then times negative 0.9848, and I will get this right here, negative 600. Okay, then I'm going to take 169 times the square root of 13, enter, and then times negative 0.1736, and I will get negative 105 I, 106, which is really close to the back of the book what they have, okay? So there we go, and we are moving on. All right, number 89. Okay, notice this complex number is already in trig form for us, which is really helpful. So we are going to take 2 to the 5th power, which of course would be 32. And then we're going to take pi over 10 times 5, or in other words, 1/10 times 5. And of course we get 1/2, so that's pi over 2. So cosine of pi over 2 plus I sine pi over 2. And there we go. All right, doing really well. Now this is 90 degrees, so really we can use our calculators now. Cosine of 90 would be 0, and the sine of 90 would be 1. So take your 32 and multiply it through. We get 0 plus 1i, or just I. Okay? And that's number 89. And I'm looking in the back of the book, and that is not the correct answer. Oh, my fault, guys. 32 times 1i would be 32i. So the answer would be 32i. And that is what the back of the book has, I believe. Yes, it is. Okay, moving on to number 93. Okay, now we're doing cubed roots. Okay, so just really be careful. We know we're going to get 3 answers, okay? And we know right away we always take 360 and we divide it by whatever the root is, in this case cubed root. So we're going to divide by 3. So we know the angle that we're going to add over and over is 180 degrees. Okay? Now I am going to go ahead and convert these to degrees to make it a little easier for us. So 120 degrees, 120 degrees. Okay, here we go. Let's find the 3 cubed roots of this complex number. So first of all, we take the cubed root of the hypotenuse and the cubed root of 8. The cubed root of 8 would be 2. So we'll put a 2 right here. And then we take these angles here and we divide by 3 because we're dealing with a cubed root, okay? So 120 divided by 3 would be 40, or would be 40 degrees, plus I sine 40. Okay, now that's one answer. Now whenever you're dealing with cubed roots, you want to have a total of 3 answers, so we need 2 more answers. So we're going to add 180 over and over until we have 3 answers. So 40 plus 180 will be 220, plus I sine 220, okay, and then 2 cosine of 400 plus I sine of 400. Okay, let's check the back of the book here, and it looks like, well, they have their answer in radians, so let me very quickly convert these over to make sure we're correct. But I'm pretty sure we're correct on this. Yep, 2 pi over 9 and 220 divided by 180. And this would be what? Oh, did I mess up, guys? Sorry about that. I'll tell you what, your teacher's getting old, guys. I'm getting so old. Sorry about that. Here we go. So we're going to add 180 plus 40. Would that be right? Let's see. 180 plus 40 would be 220. And then, yeah, that's right. Well, let's see what the problem is here. 220 divided by 180. All right, let's try 400. Okay, students, I'm back. I'll tell you what, maybe it's time to retire. Okay, 360 divided by 3 is 120. Oh my goodness, we're gonna add 120, not 180. So 160 plus I sine 160. All right, and then we're gonna add 120 again. That'll be 280 plus I sine 280. And that is the correct answer. Okay? And let's continue on to number 97. Okay, cubed root of all of this. Okay, so here we go. First of all, let's write this in trig form. Okay? So we're at positive over 1, positive to positive, so we're up here. And we went over 1 and up square root of 3. So your hypotenuse would be 2. And your angle here, I'm going to use cosine. Your angle would be, cosine of theta would be adjacent over hypotenuse. So second cosine of 1/2, 60 degrees. So this would be 60. So we're looking at the hypotenuse is 2, and we would have cosine of 60 plus I sine of 60. There we go. So we took this here. We took this here and we wrote it in trig form. Okay? Now, I'm not going to worry about this until, well, let's see here. We're going to be taking the cubed root of this whole expression here. So since we are taking, students, the cubed root of this entire expression, it's like this. We're taking the cubed root of this entire expression. So what we need to do now that we've taken this part here and we've rewritten it into this part here. Then next, we take this whole part here and multiply it by negative 125 over 2. Okay? So put the 2 over 1, multiply this times this, and we come up with negative 125 cosine of 60 plus I sine 60. Okay? So there we go. This is what we're going to take the cubed root of right here. Okay? Alright. So here we go. Let's clear all this off. And we have taken this whole beginning problem here, right here, and we have simplified it down to this form right here. So here we go. Alright, the cube root of negative 125 is negative 5. Okay, negative 5. And then we take 60 and we divide it by 3. And that would give us the cosine of 20. Okay, now we need 3 answers, okay? And remember, this here is not one of your answers. This is just this here rewritten in trig form, okay? So, this is not one of your answers. This is the problem. So here's one answer. Now we come down here and we take 360 and we divide it by 3 because we're dealing with cubed roots, and we get 120. So we're going to add 120 degrees over and over until we get 3 answers, okay? So 20 plus 120 is 140, plus I sine 140, and then negative 5, add 120, and we get 260, plus I sine 260. Okay? And that should be the correct answer. Okay, students, moving on to number 101. Okay, next to last problem. Okay, the fifth roots of 1. Well, first of all, students, remember, we want to write this complex number of 1 in trig form. Okay, so 1 is the same thing as 1 plus 0i. Okay, so on a coordinate plane, we would be right here, over 1. Okay, so really, the trig form of that's pretty simple. The length of this line here is 1, and the angle is 0. So we have 1 cosine of 0 plus I sine of 0. Now we're going to find the 5 fifth roots of this, okay? So here we go. First of all, let's take 360 and divide it by 5. We're going to get 72 degrees. So this is the number here that we're going to add over and over after we get our first answer here, okay? So the fifth root of 1, of course, the fifth root of 1 is just 1, okay? Because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. So the fifth root of 1 is 1. Now we take 0 and we divide it by 5, which would be 0. So here is our first answer, okay? Which is the same as this here. So good enough. And now we're just going to add 72 degrees over and over. And we really don't need this 1 here or the parentheses, okay? Really don't. So there we go. And let's add 72 degrees. So we'll have cosine of 72 degrees plus I sine 72 degrees, okay? We'll add 72 degrees again, and we'll get 142, 144 plus I sine 144. Okay, then we'll add 72 degrees again. And what would that be? 72, 6, 1 carrier 1, 216 degrees, plus I sine 216 degrees. And then we need 5 answers, so we need one more answer. Cosine at 72, that'd be what? 288 plus I sine 288. Okay, let's check the back of the book here, and that is the correct answer, okay? So moving on to number 105. Last problem. And here we go. Let's go ahead and write this in trig form. So we know we have -1, +1, so we'll be up here. Okay. So we went over 1 and we went up 1. So the hypotenuse would be square root of 2. So we have square root of 2. And the angle, if you took tangent of theta, right here, and let me check in the back of the book real quick. And our answer is just like the back of the book, except instead of having a decimal number here, they have that simplified root, 5th root of, 4th root of, square root of 2, okay? And that is okay, but I'm totally fine with this also here, okay? Alright, students, I hope this homework help video has been a help to you guys. Call or email if you have any questions.